Hello, and welcome to the Catching the Octopus podcast. Here, we will explore how connecting inward gives us an advantage outward. We openly talk about the obstacles and challenges and difficulties that life throws our way and how they become moments of gratitude and things that can benefit us when we look back on our lives. I'm your host, Naomi Hurley, and it is my mission to bring you top quality guests that will share with you openly their obstacles and also the techniques they use to go inward that strengthens the way that they serve themselves and others at the highest level. Thank you for joining. Let's get started. So thank you for joining us in this episode of Catching the Octopus podcast. Today, our guest is Iain Massey. Now, Iain is a company director, a board advisor, and a business consultant. He has postgraduate qualifications and a broad commercial experience. He has excellent professional and interpersonal skills, a thorough understanding of regional business environment, and wide-ranging knowledge and expertise. He's a little bit like me and has done a little bit of training in his time, and he holds a graduate diploma in business management from UWA, a graduate diploma in computer science from Curtin, and a Bachelor of Arts first class from UWA as well. He is a graduate of the AICD, which is the Australian Institute of Company Directors, company director course as well. And Iain's an associate fellow of the Australian Institute of Management, a graduate member of the Australian Institute of Company Directors, and past chair of the Australian Institute of Company Directors Southwest Regional Committee. So he knows his stuff, right? He's been doing this for a bit. Now, after 20 years in varied corporate roles in IT, Iain moved from Perth to Balingup in the Southwest and took the opportunity of a career reset. And after 4 years in general business management, he then founded Upland Consulting. And that is offering regional businesses and non-for-profits support and guidance that was not readily available outside capital cities. So Upland offers programs and support for all stages of the business journey, and in each case from the premise that the best work of the best boards should be accessible to even the smallest companies. And I love that ethos. Upland's mantra is head, heart, and bottom line. And Iain and I have talked about that before. And I just love the head, heart connection and how that he's linked that in as well to the bottom line. And that reflects Iain's vision that a business that nurtures and sustains needs to work well at each of these levels. Sustains us and our needs, then that works well at each of the levels. So we need to think well, we need to honor our values and our human connectedness, and we need to earn enough money, right? Because that's the resources that allows us to do what we do. So the ideal result is a lifestyle that you love, built around a business that you love. And that just really showcases what Iain's focus is when he's working with businesses. And thank you, Iain, for joining us today.
Thank you, Naomi. It's great to be talking to you again.
And you and I met through the Southwest Leaders program that you were involved in. So Iain had a program where we used to meet monthly and catch up. And I was lucky enough to be a part of that while it was running in Bunbury. It was great.
It was good. It was good, Naomi. We had a lot of fun. We did a lot of good for businesses locally. I have that feedback. It was a model that I had licensed from some people based in Brisbane, in fact.
Yep.
And it was a bit too cost heavy for regional delivery.
Yes.
Yep. So we have a different market, different audience. And so for that reason, it's no longer running. Someone else has taken up the name and they're doing something different with it.
Yes. So I'm involved in that new Southwest Leaders program, which isn't your Southwest Leaders program actually at the moment, which is, it's great still to have some leadership scope stuff in the Southwest though, right?
Yes, it is. I fully applaud it. What I hear about that new program is very positive indeed.
I was hoping to see your name in the list of mentors the other day, Iain.
May yet happen, those may yet happen. I've had a little bit on in my life, but I would love to be supporting a program like that actually.
I think you'd make an amazing mentor. I mean, that's kind of what you do, right? That's your
Well, I
your
do.
ethos, yeah. And you had in your bio here, you moved from Perth, or you moved from the big smoke down to Baling Up. What possessed a move down to Baling Up from the big smoke?
Well, I think Bailing Up found us actually,
Yeah, okay.
myself and my then wife. We had quite a happy life in Fremantle.
Yep.
For those who are not local, that's the port city attached to Perth. But we used to come down to this part of the world, Bailing Up and around here, for winter holidays quite regularly.
Yep.
Um, and we'd do bushwalking, and we'd have a port by a wood fire at night, and we just.
Mm.
And one winter we were down here and we saw a for sale sign nailed to a tree, and we had a look and we made some inquiries, and we thought, gee, there's a piece of this that could actually belong to us and we could belong to it. We didn't have any particular plans at the time.
Yep.
We put in an offer and the offer was accepted, and that land, that location just kept drawing us back and back until finally we made the move.
That is very similar to my story, although it was my parents that did the buying. So my nana lived in Bunbury. I lived in Spearwood or Munster, which is just down the road from Fremantle.
Yep.
And we used to come down and visit Nana often. And mum and dad saw a property out in Rosecliffe, which is just out of Boyanup, and did the same thing. They were like, oh, we're thinking of retiring down here. Why don't we do it now? So I was just about almost old enough to catch the bus into Fremantle by myself, and they moved me down to where there was no public transport. I'm like, what is happening to my world? But beautiful part of the state though, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It really is. Yeah.
Yeah. And
I'm very fortunate. I live here still, getting on to 20 years later, and I intend to continue living here.
yeah, no, it's a beautiful spot, and it's just really soul fulfilling, and especially, I can relate being a small business owner and supporting other people as well along the way. It can really tend to take it out of you from time to time. So having that really beautiful space to recharge is important, isn't it?
It is, to me, it really is. This space and the beauty of nature around here is important.
Mm,
But also, it's got to be said, Bailing Up from the very beginning has been a wonderful community for us.
mm.
Very welcoming, very accepting. It's a very diverse community, but it's been incredibly supportive all the way through our journey here.
Yeah, no, that's great. So
Mm.
you work a lot with family businesses, right? That's probably your specialty, even though you can work with any business, but family business is kind of your specialty there. Why family businesses? What do you find connects you to those?
So it was a deliberate choice.
Yep.
Here's an insight into my way of doing business strategy.
Mm.
Um, I, of course, had noticed, you can't help noticing that in Australia's regions, not just here, but right around the country, it's wall-to-wall family business.
Mm,
It's almost the default mode of setting up a business is you go in with a sibling or two, or you get the kids involved or something like that.
yep.
Um, and as I began to look into the circumstances of family businesses, what's special about them, it became apparent to me that there's a whole market there which is greatly underserved. Um, there's a very fine organisation, the peak body called the Family Business Association.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an accredited advisor with them.
Yep.
I spent years concentrating on the capital cities, and I spent years saying to them, you guys need to be in the region, it should be your heartland.
Mm.
But anyway, it was seeing that gap in the market that led me to find out what that market needed and to develop our capability and our products to serve that market.
Yeah, and I think we miss that sometimes. I mean, small towns aren't usually made up of major franchises, right? It's a couple of people, sometimes over a couple of drinks, have a great idea, and bang, they've got this spark and a business is born.
That's right, and it applies right across the regions. There is not, in the southwest here, there's not a single listed company, ASX listed company, with its home base in the southwest.
Mm,
So the corporate presence that we have, and I'm not knocking them for a moment, they're fairly few in number, and they tend to be branch offices. Even Talison Lithium, which is mining the world's best hard rock lithium deposit just down the road from Balingup. Head office is actually in Perth.
Yeah.
Because that's where they make all their deals.
Yep.
So yes, you're left with almost totally small to medium businesses, and overwhelmingly the structure is a family business.
And most of the time when we've got the family business, it's one of those things, isn't it, that we've always done it, but sometimes people don't have that thought of how they could do it better, or what, we don't know what we don't know, right? And even as leaders, we're in that position. We think we're kicking along until someone gives us feedback that throws us on the floor, right? That goes, that wasn't cool. And you're like, oh, so, that's no different for people that go into business sometimes.
Look, absolutely right, and there's a big job still to be done with educating that market, the family business market in the regions. Fortunately, now I've got a very good relationship with FBA and the estate director. Katie and I are working on bringing the message to regional family businesses. But yeah, I still talk to a lot of people who don't think of family business as a thing. Always done business, and they're not aware that there is a peak body. They're not aware that there are issues and challenges and opportunities that are peculiar to family businesses. There's a big job of education still to be done.
Yeah, and it can be tricky sometimes as well, because we don't have sometimes the diversity that we have in maybe medium-sized businesses. When you're a small business, you have yourself and your immediate team or your family members that you go into business with, and that's kind of where the leadership flavor comes from. We don't have that diversity of having different departments that we can go and network with and brainstorm with and things like that. So that can be tricky too.
Yes, it is, and that's an issue for family businesses, because you overlay family dynamics on top of that, and it all gets even more complex.
Yes.
But it's an issue for all small and medium businesses, and for that reason, our flagship programs at Upland are based around a community or a collective of small and medium business owners, because that peer support is what takes the place of having a diversity of inputs if you're leading a big business.
I love that peer support. And, most of the client, well, pretty much all the guests I've talked with, relationships or community, they're really key elements that people talk about with leadership and have been really important. And for me, peer support in a little small business that I'm operating is kind of not really existent. So I created my own mastermind, right?
Good.
So I got like-minded people together, and we meet regularly and we support each other. So, but that's something that some businesses sometimes don't recognize could be helpful.
Yes, it is. And I think what contributes to that hesitation sometimes is we've got this great tradition and habit of self-reliance in the region. There's still an echo of that pioneer spirit. So the idea that you might reach out to someone not only for practical support, like here's some money, please do my tax return, but you might reach out to someone and say, I'm really struggling with this, can we talk about it? That's a hard idea to come by sometimes in the regional atmosphere in particular.
And I think, we're getting better at breaking down the stigma and stuff attached with that, but there's still a little bit of the Aussie tall poppy syndrome that pops through too. And people are hesitant to say that they're being challenged or they're having difficulty with stuff, because they don't want other people to swoop in and go, haha, and celebrate that. Because unfortunately, some people do. But so it's trying to open up. And even as leaders, we need to be open to saying, hey, I actually don't know that this is the best way I could do this. Can someone help me?
Yes, we certainly do. Part of our methodology at Upland Consulting is what we call the 4 truths of business growth. And number 3 in those is you ain't going to make it on your own.
Yeah.
One who has achieved anything in business, if they're honest, they put their hand on their heart and they say, I could not have done it alone. it was mum and dad's guidance, or it was the mates who gathered round when I needed them, or it was the guy from the shop next door and we used to have a beer on a Friday night and share our woes with each other. Whatever it is, around all successful business leaders, there's a community, there's a support structure of some kind.
Mm.
Yeah.
And it's strange, isn't it? Because sometimes it's the person you least expect is your biggest cheerleader, right? And helps you along.
Yeah, most certainly. Absolutely. It can come from anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been very lucky that even though I do run a solo, solopreneur, I think they call it solopreneur, my support network is just bloody amazing. And you're right, I wouldn't be here without it. And even sometimes, I was just saying in a recap that I was doing then, sometimes we actually don't even see our own gifts and our own beauty, right? And even just the person that's like, that's your talent, and you're like, what, doesn't everyone do this? No, that's yours, and helping people just to have those aha moments is just gold.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. It can be very, very lonely in your own business, or even as the leader of a small business,
Yes.
um, can be very lonely. And yeah, it's too easy to dig yourself into a hole and think, well, I'm just sort of going through the motions, or I'm just doing what arrives on my desk. When pretty much all of those people, they're heroes.
Mm.
They're business together and feeding a family, and they're usually active in their community as well. And far too often, there's no one saying, well, bloody good on you.
Yeah. And I feel like that's why I love this Southwest Leaders program, the adapted version that's happening in now, because there is such a great support network there, and it feels like everyone's there for the same purpose, right? And it's not like you don't have competitors in the room, and it's not about your business per se. It's all about just lifting everyone up. And I think we don't do that enough.
Yeah, yeah, I do agree. There are a number of little business associations around, and I happen to be a member of one that really tries hard to provide that sort of support to members. We try to support the whole person, not just the business.
Mm,
That's the Geograph Business Referral Group. But it does take, I think it first of all takes recognising that that's a need that we have as business
mm,
people.
mm,
And we've still got a bit of a hangover of this sort of 20th century typecast business person as someone who's tough and independent minded and indestructible and all of that bullshit. Uh,
mm-hmm.
and the idea that we're fragile, fallible human beings running these businesses can be hard to confront sometimes.
Yeah, and I kind of love the work that Brene Brown's doing in that space, opening up us to be more vulnerable and opening the vulnerability, because it's when we do that that we can be more authentic rather than having this big shield on, right?
Yeah, yeah, we do. And as she points out, the act of doing that starts to bring the people and the energies and the resources in that you need. Simply opening yourself.
And
Mm.
I've always been someone that's fully had their heart on their sleeve. Like I'm an overshare queen as well, right? I just overshare everything. But I think that's why I've been able to build such strong relationships. And even when I was working in corporate, I'm HR and safety, probably the two spaces that not everyone's a big fan of, let's be honest. And I would go to site and people would openly come up, have conversations with me. And it wasn't any of this, oh, she's here and being fearful. It was, oh, I've got problems here. And it was I was able to help with the people around me, obviously, create a really open environment where people felt safe to share. And I think
Mm.
that comes from being open and honest with people around you, because then it improves that element of trust.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree, and I think it's really good that you just used that word trust on the end there, because in many ways, in the work that we do, trust is our currency.
Mm,
For someone in a family business to come to Upland Consulting and say, we're stuck, we're going around in circles, we're screaming at each other over the dinner table every night, the business is slowly drifting downhill, we need help.
mm.
That's a big step. They have to trust us a lot to open up to that extent with us. And it's only when we get that trust starting to happen, starting to grow, that we can do anything to help them.
And that's the thing I think some people don't understand as well. When you think of family business, you think, oh, that's great, they got this family business, but that means business never turns off, right? Like it's always in their life. And even as a leader, there's an opportunity when you knock off to just be a mom or just be a friend or just be a partner, but as in a family business, always just on.
Yes.
And how do you work with people to get them to be in a space where they can switch off and recognize a difference in relationships?
It's what we like to do is get a conversation going. It really all starts with a conversation.
Mm,
And that can be quite unstructured and informal in the beginning. But very often, the reason that they're screaming at each other around the dinner table every night is there may be something in the business, but there's a whole lot of family history stuff that's
mm,
driving the energy, that's making them try and tear each other apart. And simply to get that on the table, I mean, I'm not a family therapist, but we finish up talking about a lot of, well, do you know what she did when she was 12? You know,
yeah. Yeah.
if you get that out in the open, then people can start processing that. We can start recognizing that that's stuff that doesn't have to affect our business decisions today. And what she did when she was 12 may have nothing to do with how she's going to perform as the next CEO of the family company.
Yeah.
You know, now that she's 3 times that age.
Yeah.
But it's getting it out, getting it on the table in a conversation is always the first step.
And you know what? It might be how she's going to run it, but it's the first step's awareness, isn't it? Right. Of bringing the awareness to the space. So, um,
Yeah.
the work I do with individuals, I often find like that's the key element in the process that I do. So I do rapid transformational therapy or RTT, and there's a part where there's exploration. And that's where the gold happens, because people get to explore back and go, oh, I gave that particular meaning. And I think that's what happens in small business, right? It might be something that everyone else has forgotten, but one person in particular has given it a meaning, and then it becomes part of their story.
Yeah, absolutely. And, getting that conversation started it's not necessarily the hardest step, but it's often one of the hardest.
Mm,
Someone has to have the courage and I guess the leadership conviction to say to the family or to the matriarch, patriarch, the family leaders of the day,
mm,
this isn't working. We've got to talk about this.
mm,
Or it looks like it's working, but it's not sustainable. Um, and that can take a lot of courage.
mm.
It's very often a daughter or a daughter-in-law, in fact, that we're first talking to,
Yep.
because she is the one who has put herself on the line and said, look, mum and dad, or look, to the family I married into, this can't go on. This won't
Yeah.
go on. It's
Yeah.
either going to end badly or it's going to end well, and we've got
Mm,
to do something about that.
mm.
Um,
If you're enjoying this podcast and you want Naomi or any of her guests featured on your podcast or as a keynote speaker at your next event, you'll find their contact details included in the show notes. If you'd like to learn more about how you can work with Naomi individually or as part of your strategy to improve leadership in your business, then review the courses, offers and services at getupandgoconsulting.com.au.
So yeah, interesting. There's a whole literature actually on the role of daughters-in-law in the family enterprise.
I love that. And
Yeah.
their daughters-in-law, they're probably usually got the kahunas to see things, like to speak up, one, and they probably see it without the same bias as what the family sees it. I would imagine. And I think we need to be conscious of this in our own leadership roles as well, whether it's a family business, a medium-sized business, or a small team. We bring all these kinds of biases to our team, and the way that we look at things, and making assumptions or making decisions based on our bias can really hinder the growth of the team, right? Like, they've had they had to have a couple of weeks off because they were sick 3 weeks ago. Well, then you overlook them for a promotional opportunity or another opportunity, thinking that they're going to be sick again. I know that's a simplified example, but things like that stick in our minds and we use them as heuristics.
Yeah, they do. And as so often with families, it can sometimes be the smallest thing. Like I had an idea when I was 15 and Dad squashed it. So I don't give him any ideas anymore.
Yeah.
He's like 75 and I'm 60, but I don't give him ideas anymore.
Yeah. And one of the things that sticks out in my head is like some psychological safety, right? And feeling safe. And our family are usually the people that know us so well that they're the ones that can push our buttons just by looking at us. Right. So you'd have to really work on getting that space to be really psychologically safe as well to be able to facilitate that communication, wouldn't you?
You do. You're quite right, Naomi. And for us working with family businesses, the turning point, the magic that comes in is when they start to focus on the positives that the family have. So yeah, we've got this childhood stuff that we can dredge up, and as you say, we can just look across the table and push his buttons for him. He knows what we're thinking. But if you start to turn that around and think, well, we have this cohesion as a family unit, we have this pride as a family unit, we have this legacy. We'll make a decision together about the best thing to do with the family business as it moves into the next generation. That's when you can start leaving that conflict behind. Conflict isn't necessarily bad, but it can be very destructive if it goes on too long.
Yeah.
And you can start building on what's good about the family dynamic.
Very, very interesting space to work in, Ian. It would be every business and every group would be so different, but yet so the same, right? Like this is how I am with my clients. They present with all these different things and they're all so different, but underlyingly it's all the same. And that's all something's happened that has made us feel like we're not enough. And we need to act, feel, think in this way to cover that up. Right. And I suppose you'd see the same thing with the family businesses.
Yeah, you nailed it. You nailed it. We do have a saying that all family businesses are the same and they're all different.
Yeah.
Simultaneously. Of course, it doesn't work if you treat them as the same. It's the differences that matter to the people in the family business. But yes, there are themes and there are scenarios that keep recurring. And at the same time, they're fascinatingly different stories.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about people is underlyingly, it's all the same common root cause, but the way people feel about it, the way it presents, the way it creates stories, like all of that is so uniquely individual. And it's it's amazing speaking with people and hearing their personal story on how it's affected them.
Yeah.
And so I've got a couple of questions that I ask all of my guests. Firstly, I believe that things that happen in our lives can be completely shaking up everything around us and put us in turmoil. But later on, when we look back, we can go, oh, kind of glad that happened because of X, Y, Z. So do you have any situations that you've come across or challenges that were really intense at the time, but later on you had some gratitude for?
I'll tell you about one that's still unfolding. It's still a little bit raw, but I think it's the most pertinent. And that is my marriage of 39 years ended May last year, almost 18 months ago.
Sorry to hear that, Ian.
We're still friends. Yeah,
Yep.
It was a real gut punch at the time. And I would not have chosen this path. But one of the outcomes is I did a complete rethink of what I'm doing with my life and my business. I've set out on all kinds of new directions that I wouldn't have taken. Even the way that our relationship as friends is evolving is new and it's an exploration.
Yeah.
And in some ways we get on better now because we're not expecting things of each other as a married couple. We're
Yep.
not labeling each other husband and wife. Therefore, we've got to do this together, or therefore you need to concede to me on this one.
Yes.
The relationship, I think, has become more mature.
Mm.
I would not have chosen this path, and there is still certainly pain and grief around that, but it's opened me up in all kinds of ways that are still showing themselves.
Mm.
Still showing themselves.
It's like an unpacking and unraveling of things, isn't it?
Yeah, yep. 39 years is a bloody long time for habits to form.
Yes, yes, for sure. Most definitely. And, I can't go and say that I wear my heart on my sleeve and I overshare and not overshare. So not quite publicly, but some people have known that I'm kind of going through a similar thing right now. In my marriage is folding up and ending at the moment. And again, I never would have chosen that. And it still does bring emotion through. But I'm trying to focus on thinking what opportunities are here for my own, like you say, personal growth now, because now I get to be gnomes. I'm not someone's wife anymore. I get to be me, and I get to explore what that means and how I can show up in the world and in my business. So I can really relate to you at the moment with I mean, you're a little bit ahead of me. Mine's only still a little bit newer than that, but it definitely is something that can either pull you under or something that you can actually grow from. And I think that's the decision that we get to make, right?
Exactly. And first, let me say I'm really sorry to hear that. I know there are positives, but
Yeah.
it's also pretty painful. So my
Mm,
heart's with you on that.
thank
But
you.
as to what comes next, I guess I come back to Frankel and search for meaning
Yes.
in the concentration camps. And he pointed out between stimulus and response, there's a gap.
Yeah.
And in that gap is where our freedom lies. So between this painful thing that we would never have chosen
Yep.
and how we respond to it, we've got a choice.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And, that's kind of life. That sums up the whole of life. And that, us as leaders as well, we're confronted with all of these situations. And you're right, is that gap, is that point where we get to choose how we go. What are we going to do here? Are we reacting and using all of our subconscious programming and all of those stories and things like that? Or are we choosing to actually respond to this and try and make the best out of what we've been given?
Absolutely.
It's very, very challenging. So next one, hopefully these questions aren't going too deep. So I also find, I suppose this has probably answered the other one as well. So I also find that there's some situations that we're in that really send us inward, like really send us in this space of self-reflection when we're actually challenged or we're given an obstacle in front of our lives. And I usually ask my guests, what is it that's happened to you that's really ended up strengthening your connection inward?
That's another really good question. And I guess perhaps the one that comes to mind is going back a few years now. But when I was working in corporate IT, as you mentioned in the intro, and I had quite a good position with a company in Perth. The guy who was running that particular business unit didn't like the way I was doing the job and found a way to arrange for me to be restructured out of there. And I found myself unemployed for probably the first time since I was a student.
Yeah.
But I had it in mind for a while that I might like to try being in business for myself. And it was like he gave me that shove off the top diving board. I might not have jumped. And what I did then, I did three things,
Yep.
which I have always thought since were appropriate at the time. I had a long lunch with the lady who was then my wife, setting out everything that this meant for me and what it meant in new opportunities and so on. I booked a week to go down south with one of my oldest friends and spend a week body surfing.
Yep.
Leave it all behind me for a while.
Yeah.
We camped at Smith's Beach at the old campground there.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. And I went and got myself an ABN. And I
Yeah.
said, well, for better or for worse, I'm in business for myself now. So, it was not, I guess, like 3 years in silent retreat or anything like that. But my response to getting pushed off the top diving board was to pull
Swim.
back, to
Yeah.
reflect, to swim,
Yeah.
to rethink.
Yep.
Whereas I think the unreflecting response might well have been, geez, I better find another job and I better do that quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like I'm just mimicking your life, right? And as we go through this, because I tend to be doing similar to you, but in the after effects. And I definitely relate to that story too, because I kind of was in a similar situation, that I wasn't pushed out. I negotiated with them to leave the business because they were restructuring and I didn't feel like it was going to serve me anymore. And I didn't feel like I was going to go in there and be able to do the things I wanted to do. And my message to Michael was, it's time for me to go. Let me go as the Brownlow medalist. I don't want to go out with a hamstring injury. Right. Like I don't want to stick around. And that to me was the same as what you're kind of saying. Okay, I'm going to go out on a high and start my business rather than going back into work for someone else and still have that frustration or that misery, that comes from not following your purpose.
Yeah. I agree. And congratulations. And, I think that moment when I found myself in midair off the high board has kind of led to the rest of my career in that from that moment I've taken responsibility for my own future.
Yeah.
For putting bread and cheese on the table and for finding satisfying
Oh, you
work.
get cheese as well, do you, in your business? Not kidding. Sorry.
Yeah, I buy cheese when I get paid by a client.
Right. Yeah. But that's a part of the growth that we've experienced, right? It's not always feast and famine, but being in business, there's times of feast and there's times of famine, and it's being able to navigate yourself through that and not feel it as an attack of your own self-worth, or know and trust that things are shifting for you. It's really not for everyone, is it really?
It really isn't. And I'm an entrepreneur and I work with entrepreneurs and I love it. I love the ethos. I love those kind of circles and groups and conversations. But it's definitely not for everyone. There are people who either have external responsibilities or else they have the kind of makeup that's just not suited to that. And I guess some of the people I admire most have won their daily bread by a pretty ordinary sort of job, but they put their energy and their love into it may be family, it may be volunteering, it may be sport, whatever it is that really feeds them on that heart level. And for me, it was never going to be like that with my livelihood. I guess it's too close to my heart what I do for my daily bread.
Yes. Yeah. And it's funny, when I did leave the business I was working with, Mario, one of the directors, I had quite a close relationship with him. He was amazing. And he kind of was like, good luck with your business. And I'm worried for you, but I'm sure you'll be okay. I went, Mario, it's me. Like, I'm going to nail this. I'm going to be fine. He goes, no. You don't know what I'm talking about now, but one day you will. And I remember the moment that I actually went, this is what Mario means. It's not unicorns and rainbows all the time, right? Like there's and I think the biggest thing I've had to learn through this whole journey is trust. I believe that there's a higher power or there's a source, and I just got to trust that if I'm serving at my highest capability, then old mate's going to look after me. right?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
and that's got me through quite a lot of times where I probably would have packed it in. And I can see why some people in business do pack it in. And I'm sure with the work that you do with family businesses, you can see that potential too.
Mm. Yes, definitely. And there are some dark nights along this road. No doubt about that. And I do see family business members who actually wish, and sometimes they wish out loud, that they had just been born into circumstances where they didn't have to deal with a business.
Mm,
You
mm,
know, they could get an ordinary, boring job and have an ordinary, boring house and all of that stuff.
mm.
And I'm not knocking it. I use the word boring because I borrowed it, but I'm not
Yes.
knocking it.
No.
If the world was entirely made up of entrepreneurs, it would be too crazy a place.
Oh, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? And I think that goes back to what we're saying before, isn't it? That beauty of the individual. And,
Mm,
in leadership, that's one of our main key roles, is to see the individual and in amongst everyone, and pull out those gems and nurture them and get them into where they need to be.
yes, yeah, absolutely. Without the diversity, we're nothing. We're boring.
No, yeah, we're just ants, worker
Yeah,
ants doing the same thing every day. Um,
yeah.
so I mentioned that I do believe that there's that connection inward gives us something. I believe it gives us a competitive edge, right? The stronger I'm connected inward, the bigger the goals I kick, and I see that in people around me. So, what do you have any daily, weekly, monthly practices that you do that actually strengthen your connection inward?
I have a meditation practice, which is almost daily. Um,
I am your mini me. I tell you, I meditate daily too. This is just uncanny. All right, sorry, keep going.
we should link fingers, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, that's early in the morning. I like to get up early. I enjoy that time of day, um, and I'll have probably a cup of green tea, something like that. I do a little bit of reading with an idea that I got from the Benedictine monks at New Norcia, which is slow reading.
Okay.
So when they read their sacred text, which is the Bible,
Yep.
mostly, sometimes others, their deliberate practice is to read it slowly. It's the opposite of,
Mm.
and they absorb every word, every phrase. And so I pinched that idea, and I have a regular book that is my slow reading book.
Yep.
And I read that over an early cup of tea, and then I meditate for 30 or 40 minutes.
Yep.
Um, Mindfulness meditation based on breath awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. I also do use a journal, not daily,
Yep.
particularly when I'm wondering about stuff, or there seems to be stuff that needs to be clarified a bit.
So use it as a self-inquiry tool.
Write it out
Yep.
in the journal. I don't need to come to any conclusions. I don't need to
Yep.
structure it well. It's just somehow after I write it down in the next few days, the magic happens.
Yes. Yes. Well, I haven't got into the journaling as much as I probably should.
Mm.
But definitely my meditation practice is really important to me. And mine, I do a little bit of mindfulness, but mine is quite energy specific. So I have a real passion for manipulating energy, I suppose, to use it as something that can be beneficial. Hacking, maybe energy hacking might be a good term. But I attribute the challenges I'm going through at the moment. I attribute the way I'm able to work through them with the meditating I've been doing for 4 years. Like, that's 4 years of consistent practice that's only now just starting to show, well, probably has been showing rewards before, but you know what I mean? Like, now it's coming through, and I'm like, gee, I'm glad I was doing that. It helps give me clarity.
Well, yeah. And I do think those are so important. We live in a world that's really saturated with noise,
Mm,
and we have too many inputs. I sometimes think there are too
mm.
many voices, too much background music, too much stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and,
Too
and
many
that,
podcasts. No, never too many podcasts.
they're okay.
Yeah, there I go.
Beauty of podcast is it's not like something that's presented for you. Listen now. You choose. You choose
Mm,
choose when to listen to it. So
yes. Yeah, and I love that. And I love the thought that, like, there's some podcasts I'm listening to that were started back in 2020, and 2 years ago, and they're still relevant now. And I think to myself, I wonder how long my podcast will be around for. And this is like a timeless space or a timeless tool that anyone can pick up at any time, and it may be exactly what they need to know. And my mate upstairs, my old mate there, he's going to know, right? And he's going to guide the right people to it at the right time. And I feel really blessed that I've been given the opportunity where I can share this with people I don't even know who I'm sharing with, right? Like, it's pretty magical.
That's wonderful. That is magical. Yeah, I really love that. And you drop that pedal into the pond and you just don't know where those waves are going to finish up, right?
Yeah, and it's so different to doing a program, right? So you've seen some of the programs that I've done, and they're really great, but they're usually in the moment, right? And you're doing the delivery, and then after it's done, and it's done. But this is kind of like it's never done,
Yep. Yeah. That's
So,
great what you're doing. It's wonderful.
pardon?
Yeah. It's wonderful what you're doing.
Oh, I love it. I think, what I was saying before, when you're born to do something, I'm
Mhm.
born to talk, Ian. We know this, right? So if people wanted to reach out to you, if they just want to reach out, have a chat, a general chat, or if they want to reach out, and engage Upland and have a chat with you from that aspect as well, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Okay, so anyone is welcome to get to our website, which is upland.com.au, and there are some resources there. There's a regular blog that I write every month, business type stuff. It's a business website. Anyone is welcome to reach out and connect with me on LinkedIn.
Yep.
Unless they want to pitch their magical system for making $1 million on LinkedIn, in which case, yeah, please contact me on LinkedIn. I'm quite active on that, and it's Iain Iain Massey. Love to hear from any of your listeners. I also, since we had family business in mind, we have this little guide to the 3 big pitfalls of family business succession planning.
Yeah, right.
Avoid them. Get in touch if you'd like a copy. I'm happy to make a copy available to any of your listeners.
No, thank you, Ian. Really appreciate that. And look, all of those details as well, I'll pop in the show notes. So if people wanted to have a look, they can reach out and have a chat with Ian. Well, it has been awesome chatting with you today. Thank you so much for giving me your time and jumping on. It's been a blast.
Thank you, Naomi. It's been great talking. I agree with you on that. And I hope that quite a number of people out there amongst your listeners will find something useful in what we've been saying.
Well, I hope you go and win Lotto tomorrow, like the big one, because then that means I'm probably going to too, right? Because I'm copying everything else you've done. So I'm sending you all the good vibes. No, thank you very much for jumping on.
Thanks, Naomi.
Thanks for joining in and listening to this episode of Catching the Octopus podcast. It's been great having you here. And if you'd like to go and like and subscribe and maybe even leave a 5-star rating if you think it's worth it, I'd really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you in our next episode.